doesn't bring Sheridan Gorman back. It doesn't ease her mother Jessica's pain. It maybe prevents the next girl from getting murdered by this who never should have been here to begin with.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin. I'm joined with Jeff Berkowitz in Chicago. And Jeff, we're going to be talking about what is a real tragedy that happened in Chicago, the murder of Sheridan Gorman, an 18-year-old Loyola student, which has made national and international news. And beyond the tragedy of that murder, it has been drawing attention from all over the United States. And Jeff, you and I will be talking about not only the tragedy, the policies involved, what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in Illinois with the sanctuary status in both of those, and what the political fallout might be for Governor Pritzker as he seemingly is looking to run for President of the United States and build a campaign and a national profile. With that in mind, give me your first impressions of how much damage has Governor Pritzker had over this last week with this national attention?
Well, nationally, he suffered a lot of damage. Illinois continues to lag the rest of the country. Illinois media continue to be silent when they should be vocal. But nationally, we've just seen with Megyn Kelly, she's attacking him, and he's been attacked elsewhere. He's running for president. He's also running for governor. He was nominated along with Darren Bailey, who's the Republican nominee for governor. Pritzker, of course, was nominated as the Democratic nominee. But he doesn't care. He's running for president of the United States. He wants to be on the far left. And now he's got a problem. Because now, nationally, people like Megyn Kelly and others are saying he's responsible for murder. Okay? It's his responsibility. He's saying, oh, no. It's the federal government suddenly. They're responsible for immigration.
Yeah, it's really shameful the way they're trying to put it on Trump of all things. I want to play another clip here from Megyn Kelly. This runs about 44 seconds, folks, just so we can get a flavor of how this is playing in different media outlets.
What we have here is multiple acts already of lawlessness. He came into the country illegally. He then shoplifted. He then didn't show up for his court date, and an arrest warrant was issued for him. And now he's killed somebody. Not just any somebody, but a beautiful 18-year-old girl with her entire life in front of her, just trying to get an education in Chicago. He's been charged with first-degree murder, that's the right charge, and other felonies over Sheridan Gorman's murder. It doesn't bring Sheridan Gorman back. It doesn't ease her mother Jessica's pain. It maybe prevents the next girl from getting murdered by this who never should have been here to begin with.
So, Jeff, Megyn Kelly makes a good point. This is a series of illegal actions, and that had the law been followed, had anyone prosecuted him for shoplifting, had when he was arrested and he had a criminal record, Chicago would have just handed them over to ICE. Gorman would still be alive today. He wouldn't have been there on the beach to shoot her in the back as he allegedly did. And this is now coming home to roost, I think, for these policies of both Pritzker and policies of Mayor Johnson, as they have famously over the last 6 months or so done everything they could to rally people against ICE, to intervene, somewhat like was happening in Minnesota. What you have a better feel for the Chicago politics and what's going on. What are you hearing from the people on the street and the people you talk to?
Sheridan Gorman, 18-year-old Loyola, that's Loyola student here in the Chicago metro area, just actually in the part of Chicago, the north side of Chicago. In the late evening, she goes out with a number of her fellow students to the lakefront. It's thought to be relatively safe there. Okay, you can do that. She's dead. She's dead because of J.B. Pritzker and his Democratic Party. They've had an open borders policy, or they had it for 4 years at least. 10 million or more illegals came in, walked across the border. Pritzker was for that. He was for that. Blood is on his hands, as well as others in the Democratic Party. And then with these folks here, then they tried to prevent the federal government from apprehending them, from saying you're here illegally, you got to go. Trump said, we got to get the worst of the worst, but that doesn't mean there are others who are illegal here who are not a problem. And so it's not a matter, did he prioritize enough? No, it's a matter of whether J.B. Pritzker, running for president, set barriers to ICE doing its work, caused violence, caused friction, incited riots. This is all J.B. Pritzker for him to defend as he begins his run for president. And in this case, no, this guy was not the worst of the worst. So even if Trump had, say, controlled ICE to go after the worst of the worst, this would have occurred because he was arrested for shoplifting. That's not usually viewed as the worst of the worst. But we have to remind people that it's the broken glass theory. We've heard of that for 20, 30, 40 years. When there's a minor problem, if you don't focus on it, it leads to worse behavior because criminals do not specialize. You may say shoplifting is relatively minor, maybe, but if you arrest somebody and you don't follow up on the warrant, this guy has a gun, he's at the lakefront, and for whatever reason, he uses his gun to shoot an innocent person with no reason. And the Sun-Times says in its headline, follows an alderman, Maria Hadden, here in Chicago, who said, oh, well, this person who was killed, who was murdered, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, as if it was her problem. And she startled a guy with a gun, so he shot her. Huh? That is a Chicago alderman. And then she says, taken out of context. No, I presented it exactly in context. So this is a grave national problem, and it's a grave local problem for the people in Illinois to deal with their governor, J.B. Pritzker. And one last thing, we've just nominated, I shouldn't say we, the state of Illinois, its Republican Party has nominated Darren Bailey. So Darren Bailey is now one of the major spokespersons for the Republican Party. He gave a good interview with an NBC reporter 3 or 4 days ago and highlighted just what I've said. These are the things that have to be hammered home.
These people want open borders and they want criminal illegal aliens in the country. They do not want to enforce the law. They want to literally defund, you just read it in the bill here, they want to give $0 to enforcing federal immigration laws and keeping the border secure. That was the biggest issue in the election of 2024, the wide open border that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris hoisted upon the country. And 20 million, by some estimates, 20 million dangerous criminal illegal aliens included in that number came over the border. We have terrorists in our country. We have obviously murderers. They're putting it on display. And then these big blue cities that have sanctuary city policies, they're releasing these people onto the streets. They released them over the border when they came over under the Biden years.
So, Jeff, there you go. That's this afternoon, and that's how recent this is. When you look at the fact that immigration, as Mike Johnson said, was the #1 issue in the election that returned Donald Trump to the White House, when you look at Trump sealing the border very effectively, I think as we look down the road to November and the mid-year elections here, who knows what issues are going to be around, what the Iran war is going to be, how that's going to be playing, how gas prices, what they might be. But what we are talking about this week, the murder of Gorman, the murder of others people, the rapes that have happened, the DUI deaths that have happened, these illegals coming into the country under the Biden administration, the support for the open border by the Democrats in the House and Senate, with the exception of John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, I think the voters are really, this might be a seminal moment, the murder of, the horrible murder of Miss Gorman. But it might be a seminal murder where finally the American people say enough is enough. We won't know for weeks and months to follow. But I think definitely this is going to resonate for some time in the country. You don't have to be a policy wonk when something like this happens to realize the tragedy. And she was, you tell me, Loyola University. That's a safe place. That was considered a safe place to be out walking around. If you're going to be murdered there, then you're not safe anywhere.
Well, that's the point. If people in Illinois want to know if they can send their kids to the colleges in Illinois, like Loyola College, the answer is they can't. It's not safe. Send your kids. This is what Governor Pritzker is essentially saying. He doesn't give a damn. Send your kids outside of Illinois if they're going to college, because I can't provide for their safety. You know why? Because my main goal in life, along with the rest of the Democratic Party, is to get Democrats elected in the midterms so they can take control, setting the table for Pritzker to run for president. And the way they get control, the way they win the midterms, is to have open borders. We want these illegals here. They want them here so they can vote this November. That's what it's all about. They want to defund the police and they want to defund ICE. Because once you get ICE defunded, they're back to open borders. Who's going to prevent them from coming in? And they say, well, no, there is funding. Well, there is some funding for ICE in the big, beautiful bill, but not complete. And this bill, if they hadn't exempted ICE, would have provided for that additional funding, which will be necessary to execute a closed border. Okay? So they don't want anything for ICE because they want votes. And the Republicans in Illinois need to articulate that, just as they'll be articulating that nationally. And we'll come to more to, as we go through the show, to the close. What happened? What happened with that bill? What has Trump done? What's going on with TSA? So folks, keep watching and we'll follow to the conclusion. But for now, keep your eye on the ball. What do the Democrats want and what do the Republicans want? And more importantly, what do the voters?
I mean, I don't know how you, if you're a Democrat, how you continue to support these policies of trying to go soft on immigrant crime, on not funding ICE. The Democrats, let's just think about this. We have a girl who is now going to be lying in her grave at 18 years old. And it's because of these sanctuary policies. They could have been handing over. Pritzker has not pivoted. Mayor Johnson has not pivoted. Neither of them has said, I'm sorry, we're going to change our policies. There's no accountability for their policies from that I hear, that they're going to stand up and go, in light of Ms. Gorman's murder, we're going to be cooperating with ICE for any immigrant that has even the slightest violation of the law. And so you don't say, well, we're going to hand over, the so-called worst of the worst. With this man who's now suspected of being a murderer and what he had on his record as shoplifting, Governor Pritzker would not have put him in the category of the worst, and yet now we have a dead college student because he wasn't handed over to ICE. In other states, Kentucky, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas, we don't have these demonizing of ICE officers, and we have cooperation between the local police, the state police, and federal authorities. And those who have been arrested illegal, they're handed over to ICE and deported from the country. I would say the American people have to decide whose side they're on, and are we going to enforce the law or not? Are we going to say immigration crime needs to be fouled and enforced, or are we going to have sanctuary policies? This is going to be a big issue.
Well, the national journalists may not know, why was Medina there? Because Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, working in conjunction with J.B. Pritzker, the governor, set up a shelter for illegal immigrants near the campus of Loyola College. So this was their decision. And Medina just gets to walk around with a gun. Are they going to say it was concealed carry and he had a license? Doubtful, since he was illegal. Or do we give licenses for concealed carry, it wasn't much concealed, to illegal immigrants? The world has gone topsy-turvy. Illinois has gone topsy-turvy. This guy should have been nowhere near the campus, shouldn't have been in the country. Why did J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson think this was a good site? This was a good place to have a shelter for illegal immigrants. Why? Because they're not about, we've heard them say, in this very instant, Johnson and Pritzker say, They're about protecting illegal immigrants. That's their goal, not to protect American citizens. And the two are often in conflict. And illegal immigrants do not have the same constitutional rights as American citizens. And when the two are in conflict, the rights of American citizens should trump any kind of sense of rights for illegal immigrants. I would like to hear Brandon Johnson say that. I would like to hear J.B. Pritzker say that. And I would like to hear Darren Bailey, the nominee for the Republican Party for governor, say this is what his election is about as he runs for governor in the state of Illinois.
Let's also remember, I haven't had a chance to pull the video clips of this, but Governor Pritzker is out there claiming that Trump wants to attack Chicago. He wants to intimidate Chicago. He says that Governor or President Trump is a wannabe dictator. He's hyperbolic on making these personal attacks instead of being a governor who should be following federal law. We have the supremacy clause. Federal law trumps local law. And I would argue, how can you say as a state or a city that you are a sanctuary from federal law? This is ridiculous. And the fact that they have to own this, it is the governor's policies and the mayor's policies that we are not going to cooperate with federal law enforcement. Let me play a clip, unless you have a comment first, and then I'll go to a clip.
Well, I just say on your point about the supremacy clause, it is time for the United States Supreme Court to look at the cases that are coming up that they're choosing whether they should be addressing. And I'm sure there's a case there that they should be addressing the supremacy clause. They should be addressing when there are sanctuary states and sanctuary cities that pass ordinances and laws that conflict with the U.S. Constitution, the supremacy clause prevails. They haven't ruled on that yet. That should be brought to their attention. It should be brought on their emergency docket. And we're taping this on March 27th. By golly, that should be addressed and briefed and ruled on as soon as possible. And that should be before June of this year.
All right.
Before the term ends by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Under the umbrella that we're talking not just about the details of what happened, but also the political implications. And I don't want to make it just about elections here. The political implications for all of us. Because if we're living, well, for all those residents in Chicago, or your kids, I have a dear friend from New York, as Miss Gorman was from New York, whose son is going to school in Chicago. How many people all around the country now have to be worrying about their family members in the city of Chicago where they're not cooperating with ICE? Let me play this clip. This is from Fox News, where they were talking about this issue and Governor Pritzker. And we're going to hear what Mayor Johnson said. And then we're also in this clip going to hear a statement read from the family of Miss Gorman.
When a masked man who was hiding nearby opened fire. Chicago's Democratic Mayor Brandon Johnson also breaking his silence this morning. Here's what he had to say.
Disturbing acts of violence like this set us back as a city. We will not tolerate those who break the law and put the lives of others in danger. And as they do on a regular basis, our Chicago Police Department led a swift and decisive investigation and identified the person that is suspected of being responsible for her death.
The suspect, 25-year-old Venezuelan illegal immigrant Jose Medina, was supposed to be in court yesterday, but his hearing was postponed because he's being treated for tuberculosis. He faces a number of charges, including first-degree murder. Gorman's mom promising, quote, "We are going to get justice for Sheridan. We have a voice and it is going to be heard. We are beyond shattered." It is a preventable tragedy.
So, Jeff, obviously you're a father, I'm a father, anyone who's a father. I mean, to lose a child like this, the tragedy obviously lasts for the rest of your life. But what I would say, if I used to have two sons living in Chicago, and I did worry about them. And so I think what we're really looking here now as the populace is we have to say, do we want to have elected officials who are going to pick and choose what laws they're going to enforce and what laws they're not going to enforce? And that's part of what, and the safety of the American people. Final thought on this before we go to something else.
This is a preventable crime. If you had closed borders, if you had enforcement by ICE of our immigration, by finding people who had gotten into our country illegally and who were dangerous and should have been deported, then this wouldn't have happened. And Pritzker cannot get away with blaming the ICE that he won't let coordinate. He won't let the local law enforcement people hand off people who've been apprehended to ICE so they can be either prosecuted or deported. He's to blame. J.B. Pritzker, step up and say, mea culpa, I'm going to change my ways. That ain't going to happen, but that's what he should do. We have a governor and a mayor we have a governor in Illinois and a mayor who are derelict in their responsibilities. And we have a mayoral election, so it's time for the candidates.
Well, next year we have the mayoral election.
That's coming up in February. For over the next 10 months, we want to see the candidates for mayor talk about what is Brandon Johnson doing wrong in a slew of activities, including this one that we're talking about now.
There's also a young black woman, I cannot think her name, we've had a clip of her before, but I think she may be running. And she is now a Republican, and she goes around talking about flip Chicago red. I don't know that will happen, but again, it's to the political implications.
Let me just highlight, there are two black individuals who are more well-known, who are citizens of Chicago, who are likely, in my view, to be running for
mayor. And who are they?
One is Pastor Corey Brooks. Number two is Willie Wilson, who has run previously, and I think both are likely to run, along with a number of others, for mayor of the city of Chicago.
Well, Mr. Reverend Brooks is an articulate individual who I think has a following, and so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that shakes out. Now, talking about political implications, we are obviously in the middle of the Iran war right now. The cost of gasoline has risen precipitously, and now we see, as of today, there's the price of West Texas crude, and it is, as we see, virtually at $100 a barrel. And anyone who's been driving around knows in many places, even in the Springfield area, we're now paying close to $4 a gallon. So it's across the country. If that price of oil does not come down, I would argue it will, and it could come down rapidly. But if it doesn't, number one, we're not going to, Trump can get a new Fed chairman, as he's already selected him, but the Fed is not going to be cutting interest rates while oil is at the prices that we see now, because it will be inflationary if that has to be passed along, and that would be bad news for the Republicans as we approach the November election.
Well, the price will be coming down. This war has been going on for about 3.5 weeks. Some call it a conflict, not a war, whatever you call it. It's been going on for 3.5 weeks. Most likely it'll be over at least in the next 1 to 3 weeks.
People I hear are saying that the president's still going to attack for about 3 weeks or so before they get all the targets they have on their list.
Already, Iran has suffered the loss of their air defenses. There are no air defenses. They can't defend at all from any attacks in the air. They have no navy left. They still can do harm. And the question is, how much more has to be done to Iran? Well, number one, the mullahs are probably going out of control and will lose control, if they haven't already, to the Iranian National Guard. The question is, how much harm can the Iranian National Guard do to the rest of the world? Can the United States, working with Israel, make the rest of the world safe by removing once and for all the vulnerability of the rest of the world to economic shocks and otherwise by what's left of the Iranian government? The Straits of Hormuz, that has to be safe, and it has to be it has to be free access, I would say, and safe access those straits.
Well, they have to. I mean, you got tankers, ships which are, $500 million plus. You add the cost of the oil on them, and they're not going to want to be going through. And insurance companies are not wanting to insure them while the Iranians can blow that up with one missile. So that's why I think it's going to be going on for about 3 more weeks.
Your point and mine, I think, is that if within the next week to 2 weeks.
Well, we're gonna have mine. I think we're addressing. We don't have much time. We're gonna have to wrap, Jeff. We'll be covering it.
All I'm saying is, if the U.S. and Israel do what's necessary to provide.
Okay, we got to cut it. All right. What, folks? Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think. Jeff and I will try to join you next week, and we'll update you then. Thanks so much.